first of all, you were at the protest this weekend. What's the feeling on the ground?
I was at the protest. Can I just address a couple of points to NHS staff and care home staff that at the moment are going through a very worrying time about their jobs and paying for their mortgage and their bills? There are a couple of places they can go to get information. If they type into their web browser togetherdeclaration.org, or if they type in NHS 100K, if I just move up slightly, you'll see my purple badge ribbon, and that is showing support for these staff that are making their own bodily choice. And you may, at your own hospital today at 1 o'clock lunchtime at the main entrance, be able to meet someone that is wearing one of these purple ribbons that you can talk to and get information.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Well, look, hey, what would you say to people? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, by the way, but what would you say to people who go, hang on a minute, look, you're being selfish if you don't get the jab. You treat people on a daily basis, very ill people, the elderly. Why don't you just shut up and get vaccinated?
There is lots and lots of research evidence now coming in, even forgetting the moral and ethical questions. There was a large study carried out at Cambridge that was reported in the last few weeks that actually shows patients that catch COVID in hospital catch it from other patients, not from staff. And when you think about it, that is very logical, because the people in hospital that are ill with COVID and have symptoms and are spreading the virus are the patients that have been brought in suffering with COVID. Any staff that feel ill are at home and they're being regularly tested. So your chance of catching it for a member of staff is almost zero. So it makes no sense. The other thing that makes no sense is I was speaking to lots of people at the march on Saturday, and very few people realise that this mandate for these jabs only applies in England. It does not apply in Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. So what is the science of that? Is it a different virus in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland? It just makes no logical scientific sense whatsoever.
Do you think we're almost just sort of wasting time talking about this and almost debating whether the government will go ahead with this? Surely they cannot possibly go ahead with this and sack tens of thousands of NHS workers. Yeah, 80,000 as it stands. Do you think they'll actually go through with it? There's talk at the moment of delaying that deadline for getting double jabbed, but surely they'll just scrap it altogether. What do you think?
There was talk of delaying the deadline, but on the excuse of allowing staff to get the booster jab. Now, I'm the same as Patrick. I've had 2 of these jabs. I had them because I was told initially it would protect my patients, and it was one of our 15 million jabs to freedom. That's why I took those 2 doses. And I feel that I've been misled. I'm not taking a booster. I don't need a booster. So if the booster comes in, there won't be 80,000 staff that may be potentially going. It could be 3 times that number, because many of the people that I speak to have had their 2 jabs but do not want to take a booster.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, actually. And it's been, well, actually not reported, I don't think, until now, which is that if you constantly change the definition of what it means to be fully vaccinated, so if it ends up being 3, I mean, it'll be 4 in 6 months' time, presumably, and 5 a year later. If you need to be fully vaccinated to work in our NHS, it's not just about whether or not we lose the people who've not had the jabs now, is it? It's about people who decide, like you, maybe, they don't want a booster, they don't want a 4th, they don't want a 5th. And actually, hang on a minute, we could be losing, like you said there, 3 or 4 times the amount of people that we're already talking about.
I think it's very dangerous. Basically, what the government are trying to do is there are some things in this pandemic they've got right. There are lots of things that they've got wrong. And they are trying to blame unvaccinated people for the things that they have got wrong. And that is very dangerous. That takes us back to the sorts of things that happened in various countries back in the 1930s. We do not want to go back to that. Vaccinated people and unvaccinated people all came together on this march on Saturday. It was not an anti-vax march in any way. Probably half of the people there were vaccinated to some extent. It was against the mandatory nature. And if you allow the government to decide what vaccinations you have to have, what else can they decide? Could they decide, for instance, that everyone that has 2 healthy kidneys has to allow one to be removed to give to someone who is on the waiting list for a kidney transplant?
I mean, look, does it feel to you like, you know, it's all very well and good, we went outside, we clapped for NHS, didn't we? Goodness gracious me, these lifesavers, these people. And now, does it not feel like the government's just turning its back on NHS staff? They were clapped and now they're going to be sacked.
The government is using them as a scapegoat. I suspect what will happen is that they will drop this mandate. But I also think they will vacillate about it for so long that many people will leave anyway. I've already had one call this morning from a consultant who, although they were close to retirement, was going to continue in the NHS on a part-time basis. A very experienced doctor, very valuable to the NHS. They have already made the decision that whatever happens now with these mandates, they feel they've been treated so badly by the government, they're just going to retire. We can't afford that in our NHS.